So Ash Kulkarni, CEO of Elastic, thanks for coming to TieCon. You had mentioned that there's been about 4 billion plus open source deployments of the platform in various enterprises. So I had an interesting question as it relates to generative AI. The generative AI that we are using today with ChatGPT is based on this open public internet information.
Yeah.
But if an enterprise wants to do it, but combine the power of the internet's information with their own information, how could they go about doing that?
That's a great question. I think that's really what's going to make this so much more powerful when it comes to everybody being able to use it, not just for curiosity purposes, but for real business use cases. Because fundamentally, you need to think about it in the context of, like you said, large language models trained on the internet, but then how do you marry that with your private data? And there are multiple ways to do that, right? And Elastic is sort of at the heart of some of this. There is this notion of a context window. How do you refine or help a large language model understand your private context, understand your private data? You do that through a concept called the context window. And that context window allows you to share through vectors these representations of information about your systems represented as vectors. Through these vector embeddings, you send that through the embedding API to these large language models. And through that process, you're able to really connect the dots. So the example I always like to give on this is, imagine you're a home retailer of some sort, like a home improvement store like Home Depot or what have you. And today if I go to ChatGPT and say, I live in Minnesota and I want to build an irrigation system for a 2-acre backyard, it's probably going to give me information on, you need sprinklers and you need irrigation pipes and so on and so forth. But it's not going to be actionable because it's going to be pretty generic information. But if Home Depot wanted to create that same kind of experience on its website, what they could do is use Elastic and then marry their private context, which is all their part information. So what sprinkler heads do they sell? What pipes and systems do they have for carrying water? And so when somebody asks that same question of I live in Minnesota, etc., that interaction between a large language model like GPT-4 and their private data would mean that I would get a very prescriptive set of information that says, you need 3 of these sprinkler heads and here's the particular part number, and you need 8 of these large pipes and what have you, a whole list. And oh, by the way, if you go to our store in Minneapolis, like here's what you'd be able to get. Do you want me to hit checkout now? Like imagine that experience, that's so powerful. So I think that integration is going to be super important. And then, the other evolution that I think is going to happen is these models themselves are going to get much smaller. Today, something like a GPT-4, like there's no way a normal enterprise would be able to run it internally on their own infrastructure. But I can tell you that this space is evolving fast enough that you are going to have domain-specific models that run on laptops and maybe even that mobile device that you're holding.